So now let's see what that looks like with a few examples. I'll start with an example of a professor or friend of mine who was trying to help his class raise money for a class project, coffee farm in Panama. So they sent out this email telling about the project with a link to a donation-based crowdfunding campaign, and they were able to track the whole process. And they sent 734 emails, so this is the top of the funnel. They had software that allowed them to see who opened their emails, so they could see that 280 of those emails were opened in 18 hours. Now people are kind of aware of what's going on. Then those that actually click through the site that may be considering, there's 48, and then that led to 4 donations. Now, interpreting whether this was successful or not, kind of hard to say, because it's in isolation, so it'd be easier if we had something to compare it against. But you can see kind of what the sales funnel looks like, starting big with big numbers at the top and then narrowing down to smaller numbers. Now let's do an example where you're trying to figure out how much it costs to acquire a customer. Steve Blanks uses this term called customer acquisition cost, and this is an example that you would see if you're trying to use Google AdWords. So you have to pay money per click on Google AdWords, so if you paid 22 cents a click and that yielded 5,000 clicks, if 5% of those that click actually buy, then what's the customer acquisition cost? Or what's the cost on average to acquire each customer that you had? I'll give you a second to think about that. I'll venture to guess that some of you think that you got the answer right, but actually you might have gotten it wrong. So I'm going to help you walk through this. So the first thing that you do is you say, well, how much did you spend in total? Well, you spent 22 cents per click, and you had 5,000 clicks. So that means that you spent $1,100 in total. Well, how many customers did you get? Well, if you got 5% of those 5,000 clicks, that means that you got 250 people to buy. So you divide those two numbers, you divide the total spent by the total number of people that buy, and that gives you the average customer acquisition cost, which is $4.40. Know how to do that, you'll need to see that. Now, assume that you're advertising with one of these banner guys on the corner of the street. He's getting paid $10 an hour, he works 3 weekends, and he signs for 12 hours per weekend. 15,000 cars drive by, 40 people come by the store, and 12 actually buy. What's the customer acquisition cost? I'll let you work on that for a second. So you'll notice that I threw in some numbers here that help to give some context but are actually not needed for the problem. So how much did you spend in total? Well, you paid the guy $10 an hour for 12 hours per weekend. 3 weekends, that means you spent $360. And in this case, I actually told you that there's 12 people that buy, so $360 divided by the 12 purchases mean that you spent $30 per customer. Now think about that. Is that a good thing? Now if you're selling houses, $30 a customer is great, but if you're selling snow cones, that probably doesn't work very well. So you need to have these things in context. I'll give you some links here for some good examples of sales funnel conversions. You can look at this website, Insight Squared. It's a blog, and it goes through and shows you some examples of conversions, what that looks like. Depends on the context, the industry, what you're actually doing to know what the funnel should look like. That gives you kind of an example, which could be helpful for you to see how it works. The people that visit the site, viewed the product, added it to cart, and purchase. That's another way of doing it within a particular website. And a lot of websites have these data analytics to help you understand where you're losing customers, and we'll touch on this a little bit more later. Here's how I might implement this. This is the example of the banner guy, and this is just a table that I do for my business plan class, just to try to understand what is the process by which you can try to estimate how much revenue you're going to have. So it starts with some actions, so like you're paying the guy to work 80 hours, let's say that's per month, January, February, March, you're going to pay him the same each month, and then he's waving the banner and there's a certain number of people that are going to actually see that banner, maybe we could add a couple rows in here of those that actually come in. You would probably measure that. And then the next thing that you would measure is how many actually purchase. And you would think that probably over time more people will purchase over time, and then that will, according to how much they purchase, you'll get revenue. So if the average purchase is $4, let's say it's a snow cone, that's going to yield $2,400 in the first month, more in subsequent months. And then you would assume that for some products people are going to come back and buy more. Now they're not going to probably do that for houses, or at least not in the short term, but for snow cones you hope that some of the people that buy in January will come back to February. And so if trying to estimate what sales will look like in the future, then you would have to assume that some people will come back next year. And then if you add those numbers together, your generated revenue from advertising and then the returning revenue, that gives you the total revenue. So that's how you could use these estimates, sales funnels, to try to figure out how your sales will grow over time.